I first saw hollow pines on a map that shouldn't have been there. No county lines crossed it, no population count labeled it, no elevation, no symbol for schools or hospitals, just a tiny dot sitting inside a mass of green, like someone tapped the page with the tip of a pen and said, "There, that's enough." I was 19 when I drove there for the first time, the kind of age where you still think ghost stories are for campfires, not crossroads. I told myself I was curious, that was all. Curiosity doesn't sound dangerous until it starts sounding hungry. The road leading in was called Pine Belt Route 44, but the locals just called it the Stitch because it sewed the world to somewhere else. I figured it was just weird small-town poetry. Turns out they weren't joking. The deeper I drove, the trees started changing. Not their type, not their height, their posture. They leaned inward, all of them, like an audience trying to hear a secret whispered on a stage. The branches tangled overhead until the sky became a thin wound of gray light. It felt less like entering a town, more like stepping into a throat. There was no cell phone signal. The radio didn't cut out, but it stopped playing music, just static and occasional clicking noises like nails tapping glass. I turned it off. Silence felt safer. It wasn't. I reached the town sign at 6:17 p.m. It read, "Welcome to Hollow Pines. Population 436. Leaving is harder than arriving." The last line wasn't painted. It was carved. I got out of the car just to stretch my legs. The ground was soft, covered in needles and moss. My boots sunk slightly. When I lifted them, the imprint stayed too deep for too long, like the earth was reluctant to let go. The town itself looked normal at a glance. Small grocery store, gas station, a post office with peeling blue paint, a white water tower rust-streaked like old tears, wooden houses with dark windows, a single church steeple in the distance. But the windows bothered me. Not one reflection, no glare, no shine, no bouncing sunlight, just dull black rectangles absorbing everything, like someone punched holes in reality. People moved, but slowly, too slowly. Not injured, not sad, just delayed. Conversations would start, then pause for a few too long seconds before continuing, like the town had buffering. I checked in to the only motel, Pines Rest Inn. The clerk didn't look up at me first. He kept writing something in a notebook. When he finally raised his head, his eyes were watery pale, like faded photographs. "Here for business or belief?" he asked. Business," I said. He nodded, as if that was the worse answer of the two. The key was metal, old-fashioned, stamped number 17. It was cold, even in the summer warmth. The hallway smelled of sap, dust, and something coppery underneath, not strong enough to identify, just strong enough to warn you. My room was small, single bed, brown carpet, lamp that buzzed faintly, a painting of pine trees above the headbed, a bathroom mirror slightly fogged at the edges. The painting looked exactly like the forest I'd driven through, except one difference. In the painting, between the trees, barely noticeable, was a shape, tall, thin, still. No face, no features, just a suggestion of a person that hadn't quite decided to become one. I set my bag down, sat on the bed. The springs sighed like an old man exhaling. I told myself I'd sleep, explore in the morning, leave by noon. Simple plan, sensible plan. But when I closed my eyes, the lamp stopped buzzing. Not because it turned off, because it was listening too. Night came faster in hollow pines. It didn't fade in, it dropped like a curtain with weights sewn into the hem. One moment the woods were gray, the next they were gone, swallowed whole. I decided to walk. Bad idea, sure, but staying still felt worse. The air had a damp chill that made breathing feel like borrowing something you weren't guaranteed to return. The street was almost empty, but not quite. I kept seeing shapes at the far ends of roads, human-shaped silhouettes that dissolved when I blinked too long. I figured exhaustion was painting ghosts for fun. Hollow Pines wasn't fun. The town lights flickered inconsistently. Some stayed bright, others dimmed like dying stars. The water tower groaned once in a while, metal complaining under invisible pressure. No wind, no reason, just sound. I stopped at the gas station for water. The bell above the door chimed too loud for a tiny building. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed at a frequency that made my teeth ache. The cashier was a man in his 50s, wearing a cap that said HPI Logging Co. His face was unshaven, tired, but the exhaustion wasn't what unsettled me. It was recognition without memory. "You're not from here," he said, handing me the water before I paid. "No, sir," I replied. He pointed at the window. The darkness outside pressed against the glass like liquid tar. "Don't walk near the pines after 9. They take attendance." I laughed, not because it was funny, because fear needed punctuation. "I mean, the forest, right?" He shook his head slowly. "No, the trees." I paid, walked out, checked the time. 8:42 p.m. The roads leading out of town had changed, not visibly, just conceptually, like the direction itself had become a suggestion, not a vector. The highway I came through, gone from the motel window. The road outside stretched forward into woods that weren't there earlier. I returned to the motel. The hallway lights blinked like an irregular heartbeat. The clerk was gone. His notebook was open on the counter. It contained hundreds of names. None of them were the same handwriting. I saw the last page entry. Caleb Holt, 12, 2009. Heard the roots speak. Should not have answered. That name hit like deja vu with claws. My name is Caleb Holt. I never told them that. I went to my room, locked the door, sat on the bed. The lamp buzzed again, soft, steady, reassuring almost, a white noise lullaby for nervous idiots like me. Then the bathroom mirror fogged completely. A sentence formed in the condensation, drawn with a fingertip from the inside. You were counted before you arrived. The words faded, dripping downward like melting wax. I stumbled back, breathing hard, pulse kicking. The lamp stopped buzzing. The silence that followed was the second warning, because the first one, that was me arriving at all. I didn't sleep. I lay on the motel bed with my shoes still on, staring at the ceiling fan that refused to move. Every few minutes the light flickered, not off, not on,
just enough to remind me that something else was sharing the room with my attention. At exactly 9 p.m., the town made a sound. Not a siren, not a bell, a deep wooden creak multiplied hundreds of times, rolling outward like a breath taken by something enormous. The pine trees outside shifted, not from wind, from effort. I went to the window. The forest had moved closer. I don't mean it felt closer. I mean the tree line was physically nearer than it had been an hour ago. The road outside my window was shorter, the space between buildings tighter, like the town was being gently compressed. Then I heard footsteps, slow, bare, dragging. I froze, heart hammering. The footsteps stopped outside my door. A pause, a breath that wasn't mine. A knock. 1, 2, 3. Soft, polite, almost shy. "Caleb," a voice said. It sounded like my father. He died when I was 11. I didn't answer. The handle twitched slightly, like someone testing whether I'd locked it. Then the footsteps retreated, dragging again, slower this time, disappointed. I waited another hour before moving. When I finally did, it was because the forest started whispering. Not loudly, not all at once. Individual voices, layered, overlapping, like a crowd murmuring just beyond comprehension. Words brushed the edges of my hearing, but never fully crossed into clarity. I caught fragments. Stay, roots remember, come home. I grabbed my jacket and left the room. Outside, the night was wrong. The stars were gone. The sky looked bruised, uneven, like a healing wound. The pine trees loomed closer, their trunks thick and scarred with deep vertical splits like old claw marks. I followed the main road toward the church. I don't know why. Some instinct told me that if hollow pines had a center, that's where the rot would be deepest. The church doors were open. Inside, candles burned along the pews, hundreds of them. No one was present, yet every seat was warm when I brushed past, as if people had just stood up and stepped away. At the altar stood a man, tall, thin, familiar in the worst way. He turned. It was me. Not exactly. Older, hollow-eyed. His skin looked stretched tight, like it had learned the shape of his bones too well. Pine needles were tangled in his hair. Sap stained his fingers. "You shouldn't have waited so long," he said, my voice flattened by years. "What is this place?" I asked. He smiled, and his teeth were too even. "It's a recorder. It keeps what passes through." He gestured behind the altar. The wall was covered in names, carved, burned, scratched, pressed so deeply the wood had split. I found mine, Caleb Holt, written dozens of times in different styles, different depths. "How do I leave?" I whispered. He tilted his head. You already did. You just came back louder. The candles went out all at once. In the darkness, something massive shifted beneath the floorboards, and the forest inhaled. If fear had a temperature, this town was frozen at the core. I left the church in a hurry. The moment my boots hit the steps outside, the tree line shivered again. The forest was restless, like it wanted to applaud but didn't have hands yet. The streets were tighter now. The spaces between buildings felt pinched, squeezed like pages in a book swelling from humidity. I made my way toward Town Hall. Big brick building, 2 stories, old flag hanging out front. Normal place for normal meetings about budgets and parking rules. Except the lights were on at 2 a.m. Except the doors were open. Except the floor was humming. I stepped inside. The air smelled of paper, ink, old wood, and wet soil that had no reason to be indoors. The hallway walls were lined with portraits of former mayors, every face blurred at the edges, like the artist got bored before finishing their identities. The humming grew louder near the main chamber. It wasn't electrical. It sounded organic, rhythmic, like something long and patient vibrating under pressure. The meeting room was empty, chairs arranged in a perfect circle. A recorder sat in the center of the floor, identical to the one I keep in my jacket. Red light blinking, tiny, pulsing, recording silence that wasn't silent at all. I reached for it, and the floor cracked. Not dramatically, not like an earthquake, just a thin, polite fracture, a hairline split spreading from the recorder outward in a star shape. Blue light leaked from the gap below, faint but deliberate, like someone holding a lantern under a door during a blackout. I knelt. I put my ear to the ground, and I heard them. Voices threaded like fibers, distant but synchronized. Holt returned. Caleb counted again. Town compresses. Roots convene. Then a deeper voice, slow and resonant like a gavel hitting ancient wood. Proceed. The floor split wider. A hand reached out, not grabbing, not attacking, just offering, palm upward, covered in dark soil and thin white roots curling around the wrist like bracelets made by something that learned anatomy from memory, not biology. I backed away. The recorder floated upward slightly, lifted by the roots beneath it like a pedestal growing in reverse. The cracks closed gently, sealing the light like an eye blinking shut. The room exhaled. The forest outside responded with a low creak, like it approved the motion. I ran back to the motel. The clerk was there again, writing in his notebook like he never left. Without looking up, he spoke. They passed the vote. What vote? I gasped. He tapped his pen once and finally met my eyes. To remember you. Behind him, the highway appeared again in the window, shorter than before, but leading out for now.
I slammed the motel door behind me. The building shuddered like it felt the impact personally. The lamp in my room flickered once in greeting. I didn't sit. Sitting felt like signing something. I went straight for the archive room behind the front desk. Every small town has one. Dusty shelves, yellowing records, town history no one reads unless a school project demands suffering. Hollow Pines kept its archive locked, but that night the door was cracked open. Literally cracked. Wood split from top to bottom like lightning tried to pick the lock. Inside was static, not sound, presence. The air buzzed faintly like a radio tuned between stations, full of almost voices that never become words. The shelves were overflowing with boxes labeled by decades: 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, until the labels stopped at 2009. Nothing newer. I pulled a box at random. The cardboard was soft, damp, breathing in the scent of soil. Inside were cassette tapes, hundreds. No dates, no names, just symbols scratched into the plastic. A circle, a tree, a line splitting downward. I recognized the third symbol immediately. It was the same shape the town hall floor made earlier. I played a tape. The static spoke first, then a voice, thin, distant, mine but not mine. Hollow Pines remembers what stays quiet. Then screaming, not human, like feedback caught in a microphone too close to a wound. The tape ejected itself, skittering across the floor like a bug with invisible legs. I tried another, a woman's voice this time, calm but uneven. The stitch road isn't a path, it's a punctuation. Then a low creak like wood bending, the same creak the trees make at 9 p.m. I dropped the tape. The lights blinked twice, then stayed dim. The room was acknowledging me like an entry in a logbook. I noticed a final box on the bottom shelf. No label, no tape inside, just a notebook, the same kind the clerk writes in. I opened it. One line in fresh ink. Segment 6 begins when Holt stops pretending he's the visitor. My stomach dropped, not metaphorically, physically, like gravity tugged me by the belt buckle. I heard a click behind me, the archive door closing gently, slow, considerate, no rush. Attendance taken. The town had me filed, not as a tourist, but as reference material.
I stood there in the dark archive room, notebook in hand, silence wrapping around me like a witness. I didn't hear a key turn, didn't hear a lock slide, but the room was sealed now. The only exit was the one I remembered walking through, not the one I could see. So I walked anyway. I headed toward the town hall basement, not because I wanted answers, but because the building clearly expected me to come ask for them. Hollow Pines has this gravitational pull, not physical, more like narrative pressure. You feel it when a place has already written your next decision into the air before you inhale to make it. The basement stairwell smelled of wet iron and moss. The steps were concrete but soft under the boot, like memory trying to imitate material. The humming from segment 4, still there, but now it sounded wetter, slower, like pipes under strain. At the bottom was a maintenance door labeled Municipal Water and Infrastructure. Standard name, wrong context. The pipes were old, rust-wrapped, spiraling across the ceiling like veins crawling sideways. The walls were sweating condensation, except the droplets were too thick, too slow, and they didn't fall downward. They slid toward the center of the room, pooling around a drain that had no plumbing blueprint in any file, I'm sure. I touched a pipe. It throbbed once, lightly, like a pulse checking whether I was flesh or reference. Then I heard water running inside the walls, not dripping, not rushing, conversational flow, like 1,000 tiny voices speaking in liquid syllables through pipe metal. I heard fragments again, but clearer than the forest ever spoke. Pressure rising, Holt identified, voice authorized. Then a deeper voice, slow, deliberate, infrastructural. Flush. The pipes screamed open pressure. Water hammered upward into the ceiling, splashing the room in cold mist. My boots were soaked. The floor shimmered briefly with that same faint blue glow, short-lived but certain. The drain gurgled like it was drinking signatures. I backed up against the wall. Water dripped from my jacket. My recorder buzzed once in my pocket. It wanted to blink red again. I silenced it with my palm. Then the water stopped, not because the system failed, because the motion passed. The pipes remembered my touch. The floor logged my presence, and the infrastructure agreed. I was part of the town now, not the visitor, not the witness, the pressure.
Hollow Pines didn't just record you. It eventually transmitted you. By the next night, I noticed new behavior. TVs turned on by themselves at 3:33 a.m. Same static on every channel, a faint tower tone behind the noise, like a signal carrier. I followed it to the old broadcast tower on the hill behind Town Hall. The tower facts: 180 feet tall, built 1978, decommissioned 2010. No official reason listed. Locals call it the loud mouth of the soil. The hill was covered in pine roots that crawled above ground like pale cables. I climbed anyway. At the top, the tower light blinked red once every few seconds, slow, steady, like a metronome for a sermon you didn't agree to attend. Inside the tower cabin was a control panel, 9 empty frequency slots, 1 live mic blinking, Holt active, a speaker humming low. I spoke into the mic, barely a whisper. "Let me go." The speaker crackled back, using my own voice. "You already are going. We're just making you louder." Then every frequency slot filled with my name at once on the panel. The mic broadcast clicked on fully. The red light stabilized. The roots under the hill pulsed faint blue for 2 seconds, just 2, enough to sign me into the broadcast grid. The town below went
dark, one building at a time, like someone lowering volume sliders on reality. Only the tower stayed bright, because the tower wasn't the source, it was just the amplifier. The source was underneath, always underneath, patient and unanimous, broadcasting upward through roots, boards, pipes, asphalt, and finally, voice authorization. I stepped back from the mic. The light blinked faster now, not excited, just configured. Configured for me.
I drove toward the edge of town, where Lake Marrow sits. The locals never swim there. They say the water is too still to forgive splashes. What I saw: 12-acre lake, surrounded by birch and pine. No ripples even when rocks hit it. No insects on the surface. No reflections after midnight. I threw a stone. No ripple followed. No sound of it sinking. Just a single click from the water, like a file closing. Then the lake did something worse than moving. It spoke back without dialogue. A low vibration rolled through the ground, traveled up my boots, through bone, into hearing range without using air. Names sink, voices rise. I checked the dockwood. Someone had carved recently. Holt cleared for final transmission. My recorder buzzed again. I didn't take it out. The lake didn't want the device. It wanted the upgrade. My voice, unfiltered, first-hand broadcast quality. The water remained perfectly still. The town lights behind me dimmed to 30% brightness simultaneously, like a synchronized test system. Only the lake stayed at 100%, because the lake wasn't a witness. It was a mirror with no glass, a broadcast pool with no antenna, a place that archives, votes, and amplifies upward. A quiet protocol that finishes what Milford started. I stepped off the dock. The wood creaked once. The lake didn't ripple, but the forest around it leaned in anyway, like it was waiting for the next speaker on the agenda. And the agenda was me. I packed my bag at 5:12 a.m. The town was quiet, but the quiet felt procedural, like it was waiting for paperwork to finish signing itself. The highway was visible again through the motel window, stretched long and real enough to believe in. I drove. What happened on the way out? The trees stopped leaning in. No static on the radio. The tower light blinked behind me until the hill curved out of view. My name wasn't said again by anyone. The forest didn't take attendance this time. At 7:01 a.m., I crossed the sign, leaving town. The wood-slashed board that once warned me on arrival was snapped in half, vines threading through the cracks like cables unplugged mid-broadcast. Then I heard it. Not from the radio, not from the woods, from my own recorder in the passenger seat. A voice, mine but flattened by distance and authority. Exit confirmed, but memory is a subscription you never cancel. The recorder blinked red once, one polite status update, Then it turned off permanently. The moment it died, the radio turned on by itself, full signal, no static, broadcasting a single sentence on loop in every station frequency, AM and FM combined. Hollow Pines is a place, but Holt is a protocol. I kept driving, because some stories end when you leave, others end when the town leaves you instead. And this one, it didn't follow me because it was alive. It followed me because it was approved. Approved by floorboards, pipes, roots, antennas, and water that doesn't ripple. Approved because of the fact that I listened first. Approved because I didn't scream into the mic. I whispered into the infrastructure, and the infrastructure always remembers quiet men best.